So yeah, welcome to my first. This is my first real Ask Me Anything live. So it's been a while since I've tried to access this tool through LinkedIn. So bear with me if it's technically a little wonky this time around. The next Ask Me Anything next month in April should be a little bit more smooth because hopefully I've worked out some of these little kinks. So hopefully we'll be able to get there. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and just open up the file that I need to open up.
Yeah, welcome to my first. This is my first real Ask Me Anything live. So it's been a while since
Let me
I've
see
I've
if I can find.
tried to access this tool through LinkedIn. So bear with me if it's technically a little wonky this time
All
around. The
right.
next Ask Me Anything
So
next
yeah,
month in
so
April
I am
should be a little bit
a
more smooth.
where I always start. I always start that,
So
I'm
some of these little
an
kinks. So
educator. I
hopefully
kind of
we'll
define
be
myself
able
as
to get
an
there.
arts
I'm gonna go ahead and
educator.
just
I've,
open up the
been a
file.
teacher, but I am somebody who has schizophrenia, and I have spent my whole life now as an adult, pretty much most of my adult life, just trying to figure out what was going
So
on
yeah,
and
so
how to
I
get
am
help for
a
it, and then how to
where I
actually
always start. I
stay
always start that,
well and stay
an
healthy.
educator. I
And
kind of
it's
define
been a
myself as
struggle. So I
an
thought it'd
arts
be really helpful
educator.
to
I've
just kind of give
been a
you a little
teacher,
bit of a
but I
summary about like
am
sort of
somebody who
my
has
story, and
schizophrenia,
then kind of how
and
schizophrenia
I have spent
impacts
my
me
whole life
now
now as an
and
adult, pretty much
what
most of my adult
it's
life,
like. And then if you
just
have
trying
questions, you
to
feel free to ask me or leave
figure out
a question in the
what was
comment
going
section,
on
and
and how to get help
I'll
for it,
be monitoring the
and
question
then
section. You
how
can
to
see over here.
actually stay
And unfortunately,
well
my
and stay
computer's running a little
healthy.
slow. So let me see if I
And
can
it's been
find
a
the
struggle. So I thought it'd
file.
be really helpful to just kind of give you a little bit of a summary about like sort of my story, and then kind of how schizophrenia impacts me now and what it's like. And then if you have questions, you feel free to ask me or leave a question in the comment section, and I'll
Oh,
be
there it is.
monitoring
Okay.
the question section. You
All
can see over
right.
here.
Let me
And
go
unfortunately,
ahead
my computer's running a
and
little slow. So let me see if I can find the
wait
file.
for that to load. And while we're waiting for that to load, so yeah, so my basically is like I'm 35 today, and I decided that at some point I was gonna have to come up with like something to say about that. Like, oh, what does it mean to be 35? I guess this is some kind of a milestone birthday for most people, and I for me, I didn't know that I was gonna really make it past 16, because I have a background that's fraught with
So yeah, so my basically is like
abuse,
I'm
neglect,
35
and
today, and I
a lot
decided
of
that at
trauma.
some point I was gonna
And
have to
so that
come
was
up with like
undiagnosed and
something to say
untreated, and
about
went
that.
for
Like,
a long
oh, what does
time.
it
And then I
mean
joined the
to be 35? I
military,
guess
and I
this is
feel
some
like
kind
that
of a
generally just
milestone
compounded
birthday for most people,
what was already there that had been
I for
undiagnosed and
me, I didn't
untreated.
know that I was
And
gonna
so
really
then
make it
military
past
trauma on top of that, there were things that happened to
16
me,
because
CONUS, there were things that
I
happened
have a
to me,
background
you know,
that's fraught with
then after I left the service,
abuse, neglect,
some traumatic events
and
happened
a
after.
lot of trauma.
And then I spent 5.5 years in a
So I that was
relationship with
undiagnosed and
a person
untreated and
who
went
I
for a
felt
long
was,
time, and then I joined the military, and I feel like
it
that
was not a healthy
trauma
relationship, and objectively everybody around me
was
knew
already
it,
there that
and
had
it
been
became
undiagnosed
very
and untreated.
abusive.
And
And
so
I
then
ended up
military trauma
being
on
like
top of that,
clinically
there were things that happened to
gaslit
me, CONUS, there were things that
into
happened to
believing
me,
that I needed that person to
then
survive.
after I left the
And so I
service,
stayed in a relationship because
some
I was
traumatic
diagnosed with
events
schizophrenia at 22,
happened after,
and I
and
just
I
got out of
spent
the
5.5
military,
years
and
in a
I was having a lot
relationship
of
with a
really
person who I
strange
felt was
episodes of just different, like, dissociation and
it
all
was
of
not a
this.
healthy relationship, and
And
objectively everybody around
the
me
person
knew
I
it,
was with at the
and it
time,
became
they
very
just they
abusive,
started to tell
and
me,
I
that
being
I was like
clinically
their only
gaslit
person. They were the only person that could like take care of
believing that
me and
I needed
trust
that
them and
person
everything. And
to
then over
survive.
time, it just
And
they
so I
sort
stayed in
of
a relationship because
made
I
it
was
impossible for me to feel like I could
diagnosed
actually
at 22,
function.
and I
And
stayed in the military, and I was having a
so
lot of
I feel
really
like I came
strange
out of this. I
episodes
went
of different
from
like dissociation and all of
having
this,
this promising future
and
where I was in high
the
school, I
person
was
I
a
was
high
with at the time,
achiever,
they
and it
just
was my only way out was
started
to
to
get
tell
really good
me,
at school
I
and
was like
then
their
join the
only person, and
military
they
so
were
that
the
I
only
could
person
get
that could
money
take
for
care of
college, so that I
me
could come
and
back,
trust them and everything. And
you
then
know,
over time, it just
either
like
join the FBI
sort of
and then go back to
made it
college and get
impossible
a
for me to
master's
feel like
degree
I
and
could
then go be a
actually function.
teacher, or be a teacher
And
and then maybe later on try
so I
another
just
career in a few,
feel
like in a
like
few
I came
years.
out of this.
So I
I
always
went
had these like
from
plans for my life. I always had like this
having this
vision
promising
of what I believe
future
my
where I was
purpose
in high
was and
school,
what
I was
how
a
to
high
get there.
achiever, and it was
And
my only way out was to
and
get
then
really good at school
I
and join the
went through some
military
stuff
so
in the
that I could get
military,
money for
and it
college, so that I could
really
come back,
set me up
you know,
for it was like a
either join the
catalyst
FBI
for
and then go
I think
back to
what ended up
college and
happening,
get a
which is I was
master's degree and then
diagnosed.
go be a teacher, or
Um,
be a teacher and
I
then
started
later
reading these
on
books
try another career in a few
about
years.
mental illness, and I
So
read
I
this book
always
called
had
The
these like
Center
plans
Cannot
for my
Hold, and
life.
I
I always had
started
like this
thinking
vision, of what I
some of the
believe my
things that she
purpose was and
describes,
how
that
I would
Alan
get
Sachs
there.
describes in the book,
And
are similar, not exactly the same, but
I
to some of the
did this
events
within
that
the
I had
military, and it
experienced, and that
really
my at the
set me
time my
up
partner,
for
who is not
the
gender, I'm talking
catalyst
about somebody
for
else
I think
from
what
years
ended up
ago,
happening, which is I
I
was
was with.
diagnosed.
But yeah, so that
I
person
started
didn't
reading this
know how
book
to handle it. That person had
about
their
mental
own
illness,
mental illness and
and it was a book called The Center
their own
Cannot Hold. And
issues,
I started
and they
thinking
weren't well.
some of the things that
And
she describes that
that
Alan
just
Sachs
just all
describes in the
conflated
book
into very
are similar. not exactly the same, but to some of the
I,
events that I had experienced and that
it's
my
more
partner at
trauma.
the time, my partner, who was
And
schizophrenic,
so
was able to
I
relate.
didn't get
So
the right
I was,
treatment. I
but
didn't
yeah,
really know
so
what was
so
going on. I
unfortunately,
thought I just
people
had
who
like, I
had a
just thought I had
had
PTSD.
their own mental illness or
But I was hearing
their own
things, I was getting
issues and
messages,
weren't
and
well,
I
and
had this, there was this,
just all conflated into very
yeah, it's, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to unpack. So I just want to kind of give you the
more
highlights. And so
trauma.
I ended up being diagnosed,
And
and
so
I went to hospital because I felt
I
that there
didn't
was
get
really
the right
something wrong.
treatment. I
And
didn't
I had a
really
family
know.
member, my
I
uncle,
just
my
had
grandmother's
I
twin
just thought I
brother,
had PTSD.
had schizophrenia.
But I was
And
hearing things and
I
getting
knew
messages,
that
and
I had somebody in my
I had this.
family
There was this.
who had very similar symptoms that I was
Yeah,
experiencing and that others were observing in
there's a
me.
lot to unpack.
And so I
So I
went to
just
the
want to kind of give you the
hospital
highlights. And
around
so
right around
I
Christmas
ended up being
time,
diagnosed,
and
and
they
I went to the
admitted me, and
hospital
I
because
spent
I
about a week or
felt
two
that
in the
there was
hospital.
something
And then at
wrong.
the end of
And I
of
had
those
a
week or
family
two,
member, my uncle, my
I was
grandmother's
told
twin
that
brother,
you have schizophrenia.
had schizophrenia, and
So I
I
thought, well,
knew
are you
that
sure? Like,
I
is it
had
not
somebody in
just
my
PTSD? And
family
they're like, well, the
who
problem
had
is that it's
very
happening like
similar
all the time.
symptoms that I was experiencing and that others were observing in
PTSD is
me.
like an
And
episodic
so I went to
type
the
of an illness
hospital
and disorder.
right around
It's
Christmas
an
time,
acute,
and they
but
admitted me,
ongoing, and
and
can
I
be
spent about
complex
a week or two in the
and can be
hospital.
chronic. And
And
I
then
actually was
about
diagnosed
a
with
week or
complex
two,
PTSD,
I was
which means
told
I was
you
exposed to
have schizophrenia.
prolonged and ongoing traumas in my
So
life, not
I
just
thought,
one
are you
traumatic event.
sure? Like, is it not
And
just
for
PTSD? And
standard
they're like, well,
PTSD,
the
it's like
problem
one
is
thing,
it's
one
happening like all the
crazy
time.
traumatic event happened, or one or two maybe,
PTSD is
but
like an
like not a
episodic
sustained pattern of
type of
ongoing trauma.
illness and
And so
disorder.
I went
It's
through a great deal
acute
of
but
neglect,
ongoing and can be
abandonment,
complex
and
and
abuse as a
chronic.
child
And I
and
actually
as a
was diagnosed with
teenager. And
complex
then I joined the
PTSD,
military, where I experienced
which
more
means I was
of
exposed to
that, and
prolonged and
worse.
ongoing traumas in
And
my life,
which
not
I
just
don't really want
one
to go into
traumatic
all the
event.
military stuff. I don't feel
And
comfortable
for standard
talking about it
PTSD,
because
it's
the
one thing,
military
one
stuff
crazy
is
traumatic
directly
event
tied in
happened,
with
or one or
some of
two
the
maybe,
symptoms
but
that I
not a
experienced. Some
sustained
of
pattern of
the
ongoing trauma.
psychosis I
And so
experienced is
I went
also
through a
enmeshed
great
with the
deal of neglect,
PTSD that I
abandonment,
have
and
from
abuse
some of
as
the
a
things that I
child
experienced in the
and as a
military.
teenager. And then
So
I joined the military, where I
I
experienced
live
more
with it
of
constantly.
that
And so I just want to get
and
through
worse.
to the part where this is
And
not the
which I
right
don't really want to
slideshow.
go
I
into all
want
the
to get down
military
to
stuff. I don't
just
feel comfortable talking
um,
about it because the
explaining a
military
little bit
stuff
about the
is
basics
directly tied
of the
in with
illness and sort of
some of the
how it
symptoms that
works.
I experienced, some of
But I think it would
the
be easier
psychosis
if
I
I had
experienced is also
the
enmeshed with
correct
PTSD that I have from
correct thing.
some of
Let
the
me
things
just
that I
check
experienced in the
and see real
military.
quick if there are any
So
questions
I
already in
live
the
with it
comment
constantly.
section.
And so
And
I
I don't
just
want
want to
to
get
ignore the reason I'm
through to the
here.
part where this is not the
Oh, is
right
there an echo?
slideshow.
Okay,
I
hang on
want to
one
get
second.
down to just explaining a little bit about the basics
Thank
of
you,
the
Joanne.
illness
Thank
and
you
sort of
so much
how it
for pointing
works.
that out. I really appreciate the
But I
feedback
think it would be easier if I had
on what's going on so you guys can see.
correct.
So what you're looking at right now is just the beginning of a webinar that I'm putting together
Are there
on
any
schizophrenia and
questions already in the comment
how
section?
it
And
should
I don't want
be,
to
or
ignore
how it
the
could be more
reason I'm here.
authentically represented
Oh, is
in
there an
art
echo? Okay,
and
hang on one
film
second.
and television and media. I'm a filmmaker, a writer, and I've
Thank
been
you,
a
Joanne.
writer
Thank you so
and
much
a creative
for
artist
pointing
my
this
whole
out. I really
life.
appreciate the
It's really
feedback
saved my life. It's I
what's
was
going
talking
on
about how
today.
today is my birthday,
So
and
what
it's
you're looking at right now
a
is
day I
just
spend in the
the beginning
hospital.
of a webinar that I'm putting
It's
together
a day that
on
I spend
schizophrenia and how it
battling suicide
should
more than
be
any other
how it could
day.
be more
And this
authentically
conversation is meant to be
represented
frank. There
in
may be
art and
triggering
film and
language, there may be
television
triggering
and media.
phrases and things like that,
I'm
but
a
I'm trying to
filmmaker, a
be real and
writer, and
honest
I've been
about
a writer
my experience and not
and a creative
mask it
artist
for
my whole
everybody. I'm
life,
not
and
here
it's really
today to
saved my
make other
life.
people
It's
comfortable.
I was talking about
I'm
how
here to
today is
answer
my
questions.
birthday
I'm here
and
to
the day I
just
spent in the hospital.
share my experience.
It's
And
the
my
day
lived
that I
experience has
spend
been an ugly waking
battling
nightmare,
suicide more than any
because
other
the
day.
basics of
And this
schizophrenia is
conversation is meant to
it's
be
not
frank.
split
There may be
personalities,
triggering
it's not
language, there may
multiple
be triggering
personalities, it's not
phrases
any
and
of
things like
that. It's
that.
not
I'm just
psychopathy.
trying
We're
to be
not
real
talking
and
about
honest
serial
about
killers from
my
movies or
experience
Ted
and not
Bundy or
mask it.
people like that. Ted
I'm
Bundy
not
didn't hear
here today to
voices.
make other people
And there's a lot of
comfortable.
science and
I'm
research
here to
about that. And
answer
this is,
questions.
today
I'm
isn't for
here
me to
to
like do that. I already have a
share my
webinar coming up on
experience.
March
And my lived
22nd,
experience has been
which
an
is
ugly
about this and about
waking
what
nightmare.
schizophrenia really looks like.
But
So I'm
the
just going to
basics of
use this today to
schizophrenia
pull
is
from it,
it's not
but I
split
don't want
personalities. It's
to
not multiple
play this
personalities.
sound because I'm
It's not
already
any of
doing this
that. It's
live.
not
So I just want to go
psychopathy. We're
through
not
the
talking about serial killers from movies or
actual
Ted Bundy or people
presentation.
like that. Ted Bundy didn't
So
hear
I
voices.
wanted to show you
And there's
just
a
the
lot of
definition.
science
This
and
will help
research about
me
that.
stay focused is because I have ADHD. I don't have any medication. I don't have any therapy right now. I switched jobs, and in so doing, I lost my insurance. So I'm trying to get back onto insurance. So forgive me if I seem to be all over the place. This is really nerve wracking to just have to try to organize. And I expected to have a little bit more of a live chat going. And so now I have to switch screens back and forth to just make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions that may be happening in the chat. So forgive me if I seem to be neglecting the comment section. I'm just trying to make sure that I keep to the time. It's 5 14 right now, and so I just want to make sure that I keep to my time frame. So what is schizophrenia? Basically, it is a neurological condition which adversely affects the way the person perceives the world around them. And that often is marked by auditory or visual hallucinations, disorganized speech or behavior, paranoia, delusions, which are fixed false beliefs that no matter what the person, no matter how much evidence you present to this person, they still reject it and they still insist on their version of reality. And so it is psychosis itself. It's, people conflate psychosis with psychopathy, but psychopathy has to do with empathy and a person's ability to see and feel empathy and feeling toward another human being and process emotion and oxytocin. And psychosis is a state of being or a temporary state that can be either induced by substances in a temporary state, or it can be a feature of mental illnesses, not just schizophrenia, but other mental illnesses like bipolar disorder, even depression. If you've ever experienced depression and you've ever had a day where it was so bad where you were hearing voices, or you were hearing strange things, and nobody else was reporting hearing that, that's a form of psychosis. Not everybody who hears things and sees things is a person with schizophrenia necessarily, is what I'm trying to say. So people with schizophrenia, and not all people with schizophrenia experience auditory and visual hallucinations. Some people don't experience any of those type of hallucinations or positive symptoms, which are symptoms or elements or features of the illness that uh, add things to my life or my perception that damage my ability to function. So positive symptom just refers to something that is you know, that the disorder is adding to make my life more difficult and for everyone else's life around me to be really difficult too. And then there's the other side of it, which is I just lost track of it. I don't know. But the other side of that, which is that you can't, I don't know where I was going with that. Okay, moving on. Like MS, Parkinson's, or cancer, schizophrenia is an incurable neurological condition. You can recover. Many people recover from schizophrenia. I'm considered to be in recovery, but because I'm not on medication, I am suffering more. And so I'm hanging on by a thread with the tools that I've learned in previous therapy sessions with good therapists, not the bad therapists, but the good ones. And I hang on to those tools and I try to use them and implement them to help kind of swing me to the next bar. Like I'm a little monkey on the monkey bars and in between insurance and in between access because I've been basically poor my whole life. I haven't been able to sustain my career even for very long because of my functioning is impacted by sleep, stress, which I'm always stressed about money, and I'm always stressed about where I am and what I'm doing and where I'm going, which everybody is. But I also have these symptoms that are other people aren't experiencing. Whereas you or Chandra have an inner monologue. I have an inner monologue or dialogue with my internal voice, and I can hear that inside my head. But for me, the positive symptoms are voices that I hear that sound like a person sitting next to me, but nobody else can see them or hear them. It's like the TV show Ghosts. We're watching the show called on Paramount Plus called Ghosts, and it's all about this woman who dies, and when she comes around again, she finds out she comes back to life or whatever. She finds out she can see ghosts, but her husband can't. So he's sitting around and she's having all these conversations and all this world around her, and he can't see or hear any of it. So she just looks like somebody with psychosis, somebody with schizophrenia, even, because she's really invested in that world and like in living two realities. So anyway, so I just want to go back to this affects millions of people around the world, and it doesn't, but it's stigmatized. Cancer is not stigmatized in the same way that schizophrenia is stigmatized. And there are very few, if any, safety nets for people like me. I have actually applied for disability. I became disabled technically by by this disorder in 2012, and I have struggled ever since to maintain employment for very long. I have lost my jobs. I have failed because I haven't been able to sustain, my functioning, and then lose job, lose insurance, then the cycle repeats. So, what is schizophrenia not? Well, I kind of already alluded to the fact that schizophrenia is not split personalities, even though schizo means split. Phrenia means mind, or friend is mind. It's the splitting of the mind from objective reality, not from its identity into other alter personalities. Okay.
and
That's
loses job, loses friends,
dissociative
loses close
identity
people.
disorder. I want to get the name right because
So
it's
what
gone
is
through different name
schizophrenia not?
changes
Well,
because
I
of
kind of
stigma.
already alluded to the fact that
A lot of people don't
schizophrenia
even
is
believe it
not split
exists. So
personalities, even
many
though
people in the
it
medical
appears
profession and
split
psychology don't even
in
believe
his
that DID is a
mind,
real
friends in
thing.
his mind.
But then
It's
there's like
splitting
people
the
who are
mind from
there's so many
being
cases of that out there that you're like, okay,
not
that's must
from
be a real thing. So there was
its
stigma
identity into
attached to
other alter
those people, and so
personalities.
they
Okay.
changed it from multiple
That's
personalities or split
dissociative
personalities
identity disorder. I want to
into
get the
dissociative
name
identity
right because
disorder,
it's
so
gone
DID.
through different name changes.
But
So stigma,
schizophrenia is splitting
people
off
don't even
of the
believe it
mind
exists.
from objective
Many people
reality.
in the medical
And
profession and
so that's what that
psychology don't even
means.
believe that
But
DID is a real
it's
thing.
not caused
But
by
there's
like drug abuse.
there's
So
like people
you
who
can,
are, because
like
there's
I
so
said
many
before,
cases
you
of it
can
out there that you're like,
experience, a
okay,
person
that
can
must be a
experience a
real thing. But
temporary
there's
state of
stigma
psychosis under the
attached
influence of
to those
alcohol,
people. And so they
during an
change
M
it
block
from
blackout,
multiple
which I
personalities or
have
split
experienced. And I've
personalities
experienced many M block
into
blackouts.
dissociative identity
And
disorder.
it's
So
when
yeah.
people talk about
But
drug use, most of the
schizophrenia is
instances
splitting
of
off
violence
of the
with
mind
schizophrenia,
from objective
usually
reality.
there's a substance that's
And so that's
comorbidly,
what
there's
that
a
means.
substance
But
abuse that the
it's
person
not
is
caused
using
by
a
like drug
substance that
abuse.
is
So
really
even
warping
like
their
I said
mind
before, you can
beyond what their
experience,
mind
a
is
person can experience
already
a temporary state
working
of
with and
psychosis
working
under
and
the
fighting
influence of
against. And then
alcohol during an M block
substance comes
blackout,
in
which
and
I've
that
experienced. Many
exacerbates
M block
the
blackouts.
paranoia or
And
the
it's
voices
when
or
people talk
the
about
symptomology of
drug
that
use,
person.
most of the
And then once
instances
they've
of
blacked out,
violence
and
with
block means to
schizophrenia
be
usually
awake. It's almost like
substance
sleepwalking. You're not actually aware of your
substance
surroundings, but you can
abuse
be talking and
versus
walking and carrying on
psychosis that
conversations,
is
and you can
really
even attack
warping their
people and
mind
be violent.
beyond what their
And
mind is
that's happened.
already
I've done that,
working with
and
and working and fighting against. And then that
I didn't intend for
substance
that to
comes in and
happen,
that
but I
exacerbates
very
the
easily could have,
paranoia or the
you know,
voices
killed
or
somebody, and
the
that's happened.
symptomology
So
of that
I didn't want
person.
to get too
And
far
then
into
once
that.
they've
That's
blacked
a
out,
very
and block
personal
means to
story,
be
and it
awake. It's almost
affects
like sleepwalking. You're
both of
not
us in the
actually
room,
aware of your
and we hadn't
surroundings,
talked
but you're
about prior to
talking and
this meeting
walking and
today. We
carrying on
haven't discussed
conversations, and
sharing
you
the
attack
details
people
of
and
that
be
story. So
violent.
I'm going to leave it to Chandra if
And
she
that's
wants to share
happened. I've
it.
done that.
But
And
today was really
I
just about answering questions, and I
didn't
just wanted to give the
intend
lay
for
of the
that to
land
happen. But
on the illness and
I
kind of
very
what I
easily could
generally
have,
experience,
you
and
know, killed
then
somebody, and that's what
go from
happened.
there,
So I didn't want to get too
and
far
then
into that
answer any
because it's a very
follow up
personal
questions that you may
story,
have.
and it
It
affects
doesn't make a person
both of us in the
automatically more
room, and we
dangerous.
hadn't talked
It's
about
just
prior
that
to
like
this meeting
there
today.
are
We hadn't discussed
outliers and there are
sharing
exceptions.
that the
But if you
details
go
of
in
that
to look
story. So I'm going
at
to leave it to Chandra if she wants
statistical
to share
information
it.
on schizophrenia and
But today
violence, you're
was
going
just
to
about
find that by and
answering
large, more
questions, and I just
people,
wanted to give the lay of the land
people who
on
have
the illness
schizophrenia are more
and
likely
what
to
I
actually be
generally
victims of
experience,
violence than they
and
are to
then
perpetrate it themselves.
go from
And the
there.
majority of
And
cases
then
of
answer any
crime, especially
questions, follow up
violent
questions that you
crime,
may have.
we're talking about
It
people who are
doesn't make a person
neurotypical, and those crimes are
automatically more
usually crimes of
dangerous.
passion.
It's just that
You
like
know, there are
there are
people in the world,
outliers and there are
most of the cases of
exceptions.
serial
If you
killers
go
and the
in to
most
look
violent
at
criminals, those
statistical
people
information
weren't
on
hearing
schizophrenia and
voices.
violence, you're going to
And
find
if
that
you look
by
at
and
my
large, more
LinkedIn posts
people,
about this, I do cover this at length. I actually have talked a
who have
lot about,
schizophrenia are more
I have a
likely to
4-part
actually be
series on
victims
my
of
LinkedIn
violence.
newsletter, Mind Tech Insider, where I
And
go over
majority
in detail. I
of
actually do
cases
talk
of
about that
crime,
violent
especially violent
episode
crime,
a little bit
we're
more
talking
detail.
about people who are
So if
neurotypical and have
Chandra's not feeling
crimes of
comfortable
passion.
talking about that
You know,
experience, and
there are people
I
in the
don't
world,
feel like this is
most
the time and
cases of
space for
serial
that
killers
today,
and the most
but
violent
if you
criminals
want to know more
are
about
people who
that,
aren't
you can
hearing
read
voices.
that schizophrenia and
And if you
violence
look at my
series
LinkedIn
on
posts
Mind Tech
about this, I do
Insider.
cover this at
And that's
length,
on
and I
my
talk a
profile. You
lot
can go
about.
check that
I
out
have a four-part
anytime.
series on my
So you don't have to
LinkedIn
be on these
newsletter, Mind Tech
LinkedIn lives or
Insider,
any of
where
these
I go over in
Zooming stuff
detail
to
and
get
actually talk
access to
about that
that
violent
information
episode
if
a
you
little
don't
bit
want
more
to be here. You
detail.
don't have
So if
to know the story.
Chandra's not feeling comfortable talking about
But
that
yeah, it's
experience, I don't feel like this is the time and space for that
awful
today.
example
But if you
of
want to know more
schizophrenia
about
and
that,
a
you can read
substance
that
combined
Schizophrenia and
with a
Violence
person's
series on
trauma.
Mind Tech
And I,
Insider.
as a military
It's
veteran, I
on my
had military
profile. You can
trauma
go check that out
associated as well. And so it all
so
combined
you
to
don't have to
make
be
an
on these
extremely
LinkedIn lives
traumatic and
or
almost fatal
Zooming stuff to get
um,
access to
night.
that information
And
if you don't
that's
want
the worst example I can think
to
of.
know
But
the
I
story.
would be lying if I said I've never been violent.
But
I
yeah,
have
it's
been violent.
awful,
And in every
awful
instance of
example
violence, I
of
was either under the influence of
a
alcohol and I
substance
didn't have
combined
awareness of my
with
surroundings or who I was
trauma.
with, and
And
it
I,
turned
as a
into
military veteran, I had
a
military
flashback.
trauma associated as
And
well. And
so
so it all
those things
combined
are
to make
all
an
conflating
extremely
together.
traumatic and
But it
almost
doesn't
fatal
mean that it's okay.
night.
It doesn't mean that
And
I condone violence or I excuse violence in any way. I just want people to have a real clear-eyed understanding of schizophrenia and violence, that it's not something that that people with schizophrenia can always necessarily control when they're completely psychotic. When you're psychotic means you're out of touch with reality. It means that you don't know what time of day it is. You don't know necessarily who the person you're looking at is. You don't necessarily know your name. You don't know where you are. And when you're having a flashback, you're actually in that place in space and time where that traumatic event happened again, and you're reliving it. You're smelling it, hearing it, seeing it. You don't see the objective world around you anymore. You're like being transported back into that place in space and time. So if I was in a military environment and I have a flashback about military stuff, then that I could manifest the same behaviors that I did in that situation and scenario, leading to violent actions. And that's what's scary about it. It's really scary to not have control. And it's scary to think that I could inflict death upon somebody I love. I don't want to. It's never going to be my intention. It's just never. But I also know, because I know right from wrong. My core self knows that killing is wrong and hurting an innocent person who's done nothing to me is not okay ever. Except in self-defense or defense of others. That's always been the exception in my mind, is if you have no choice because you have to save a child's life, yeah, you save the child. But it's from my perspective, I didn't there is no excuse for what happened. But I took responsibility for saying, okay, listen, I have pattern of abusing alcohol to the point of end block. And once I hit end block, which means that you're basically a walking, sleepwalking zombie who can walk, talk, and hurt people and do crazy things and not even be aware of it and have no memory of it later. I mean, how many times have you ever consumed alcohol? Ask yourself, how many times have you ever consumed so much alcohol that you had no memory or very few or scant memories? But everybody else has all kinds of stories about how you behaved and acted, right? Everybody else remembers. A lot of us have those experiences, but we write them off as like just this, oh, fun partying culture. It's alcohol is like the number one killer like, of all the drugs and substances in the world. They've outlawed marijuana and everything over the years on the federal level. It's been outlawed, but alcohol is legal because, people and freedom and, prohibition and all that. And we said you can't take people's right away to consume whatever poison they want. But then those people get behind cars and they kill people. Those people shoot their friends. They, in a drunken rage or just having fun, messing with their gun in their car or whatever, or just whatever it might be. There are so many instances where people who are under the influence of substances kill or hurt other people. But that doesn't make them evil or dastardly or nefarious intended people or psychopaths or sociopaths. That makes them people who are not making good, wise just choices for whatever the reasons are, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that person is a psychopath or a sociopath. And so we cannot, it's really dangerous to conflate sociopathy and psychopathy with schizophrenia, because people with schizophrenia have empathy. We feel and can love. We may be detached, we may be distracted, we may be ignoring at times because we're overwhelmed by stimulus and we're hearing things and we're seeing things and we're trying not to respond to every little thing that we see and hear. And we're trying to, stay focused on what's right, what's real, what's right in front of me. I'm trying to focus on Chandra and what she's trying to tell me and impart to me, but it's really challenging because I'm experiencing the hallucinations. And it's not one, it's not just even two. I've got like, I don't even know how many. It's about at least 12 because there's like these different frequencies, there's different like tones of voice, there's like different genders, and there's like these in between gendered voices that sound like very androgynous and just strange. And then it's just there's whispers, there's full on conversations that are happening in other rooms, so that makes me feel that people are talking about me. So when I come into the room and I am with people, then I start believing that my thoughts are being broadcast and I'm having experiences that other people aren't having, and I'm developing a story in my head that explains why that's happening. And it may not be correct. The story that I come up with can be a delusion, a fixed false mindset that people are talking about me, that people are out to get me. And the voices that I hear fuel that. And I have one particular voice sits like right behind my ear, and it sounds like a real person. Like it's not for me. It sounds as if it's Chandra talking to me. And so I have that. And then I have we're looking at here now, we talked about visuals. So visuals, I see a lot of distortions in faces, and faces with like gaping hole where like the face should be, there's like a big hole. And faces with wounds, or I see things like decapitated heads or body parts and brain matter. um Things wobble and things look off, and they make me feel like I'm being watched, or they're looking at me or staring at me. Have you ever looked into a mirror for like a long time? Have you ever like gazed into a mirror? Well, all the
Yes.
movies that are out there about like what can happen in a mirror, you know what I mean? Well, we all are exposed to some kind of media in our lives, and I do think that that does have a little bit of an effect here. But I just feel like it's kind of like creepy, eerie, weird feeling like there's an abyss staring back at you. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I see when I look into mirrors all the time. It's part of the reason why I don't like looking in mirrors, and I have a lot of mirrors in my house. and I
For
almost
all
never
the
look in the
movies that are
mirror.
out there about like
'Cause sometimes
fucking
I see things on my
talking in the
face,
mirror,
and I
you
start
know what I mean?
picking my face because 'cause
So
I'm
all
like,
our
I'm
stories
nervous or
are kind of
I'm
meeting
like,
in our
I'm worried
life, and
about
I
my
do think
what's
that
on
does
my
have a
face
little
all the
bit of
time or
an
how
effect
big it
too.
is, and it looks like I
But
have a big
I just feel
gaping,
like it's
like,
kind of like
fucking wound in my face,
creepy,
and
weird
I'm
feeling
there, but then I
because
can
it's
feel the
very
scab
dark
from me
too. You
picking
know
at
what
my
I mean?
face, and then I pick it
That's
up,
kind of what I see
you
when
know?
I look into
So then
mirrors.
I have
Like
tactile, which is anything that
one
I
of the
could
reasons why I
feel that other
like
people
looking in
aren't
mirrors,
feeling,
I
like
have a lot of mirrors
bugs
in my
crawling on
house,
my skin, or
and I
especially bugs
love
crawling
looking
on
in
my
the
skin. I
mirrors.
constantly feel like
But
there's
sometimes I
something
see things on my
on me
face, and I
all the
start
time,
picking at my face because
and
I'm
I
like
often feel
nervous or
scratched,
I'm worried about
like
what's
there's
on
something
my face
scratching
all the
me.
time or how big it is, and it looks like I have a big
So those are
gaping like
some just
fucking
kind of
wound in my
examples
face,
of
and
the
I'm there, but then I can
hallucinations that
feel
I
the scab from me
experience.
picking at
And
my face, and then I pick it
let's
up,
go ahead and move
you know. So
a
then
little
I
bit
have
further. I wanted to.
tactile, which is anything that
This
I can
isn't the
feel that other
PowerPoint
people aren't
version.
feeling,
That's
like
okay.
bugs crawling on my skin, or especially bugs
What it is,
crawling
what
on
it
my skin. I
isn't, what's
constantly
not. We
feel
already
like
went over
there's
that.
something
Knowledge
on me
A, we're there.
all the time,
Auditory. We talked about auditory.
and
Not
I
just
often feel
background. We're not
scratched.
talking about like the ambient noise that you hear like in a restaurant. I'll hear that
So those
same
are
kind
some
of
of just
ambient
kind of
noise when there's
examples
no one
of
around.
the hallucinations
Here,
that
like right
I
now, there's always
experience,
some
and
layer. If you're familiar with Phil Spector and the Wall of
go a little bit
Sound,
further. I wanted to
it's like there's these layers, and there's always this whoa in the background. There's like this field of background of like people's voices just talking at a level that it's just out of my earshot to make sense of what they're saying. And then there's the fountain. We have a fountain, a water fountain for our cats. And I've now actually had to ask Chandra to like unplug it finally for us after using it for all this time because it was driving me insane because it was babbling at me. It was talking to me like distorted in a weird, distorted, like it sounded like demon, like demonic, and it was driving me crazy. And I couldn't control the volume of it.
And then there's the fountain.
And the
We have a
voices are
fountain, a
not,
cat,
they
a
can
water
be,
fountain for our
they can
cat.
be,
And I've now
they're
actually had to
like right
ask
now, there's one
Chandra
that's
to
telling me like, shut
unplug
the
it
fuck up.
finally for
I
us
want to kill
after
you. I'm
using it for all
coming for
this time
you.
because it was driving me
They're
insane.
saying things
And it
like
was
that. And it's
babbling
hard to
at
even
me.
describe what it is,
It was
what
talking
to
to me
parse
like
it all out for
distorted in a
you
weird,
because I
distorted,
have this
like it sounded
wall
like
and I'm
demon,
trying
like
to ignore the
demonic.
wall
And
and
it was
focus
driving me
on what's
crazy.
actually being said to me so that I
And
can
I
relay
couldn't
it to
control the
you,
volume of
what
it.
is being said to me, but I can't even quite
And the
always make it
voices
out.
are not,
But
they
it's
can
hitting me,
be,
it's hitting me,
they
and it
can
feels like
be.
someone's
So
scratching at me from
like
the
right now,
inside
there's one
constantly. It's
that's
like
telling me like,
water
shut the
torture.
fuck
It's like
up.
being from
I
the
want to kill
inside of my
you. I'm
brain.
coming for you.
You know, it's really
They're saying things like that,
constant.
and
It's
it's
like
hard to
being
even
followed
describe
around by in the ghost series.
what
She's
to
there's
parse
12
it
of
all
these
out
guys,
for
or there's
you.
about a
And
dozen
I
of
have this
them, or so in the
wall,
cast
and I'm
of
trying
these
to ignore
ghosts
the
that are
wall
always
and
in her
focus
space.
on what's
I have
actually being
no
said to me so that I can
silence, no
relay it to
peace, no
you, what is being
privacy.
said to
I'm
me.
always
And I
being
can't even
watched
quite always make it out. But it's
because the
hitting me,
voices
it's
are
hitting
always
me, and it
observing my
feels
behavior and
like
commenting on my
scratching at
behavior.
me
They're
from the
telling me I'm talking
inside
too fast and
constantly.
I
It's
should
like
slow down.
water
They're telling me
torture.
that I'm
It's like
way off the track and that
using
I should
my
stop, that
body.
I'm a failure.
You
They're
know, it's
telling me
really
this. And it's as
constant.
if
It's
someone's
like being
talking to
followed
me.
around by in the ghost
It
series.
sounds
There's
real to
12 of
me.
these guys, or there's about a
And it's
dozen
very
of them, or so in the
disorienting because they'll
cast
tell me,
of
oh,
these
don't do that.
ghosts that
Don't
are
drink that.
always
It's
in our
poison.
space. I have no silence, no peace,
And
no
I also hear
privacy.
random
I'm
weird
always being
music,
watched
but it's very
because the
unsettling.
voices are always observing my
And the
behavior and
tactile
commenting
starts
on my
about being
behavior. They're
scratched.
telling me I'm
About
talking too
that.
fast and I
Okay.
should slow down.
I don't
They're telling
see
me that I'm
any,
way off the track and that I should stop, that I'm a failure. They're telling me
I don't
this.
see any.
And it's as if
Did I get
someone's
any
talking to
updates
me.
from? Just want to check and see. I knew that we had a few people who
And
were
it's very
trying to.
disorienting
No, no, no.
because they're
I'm
telling
looking
me,
at my
oh, don't do that, don't
Thank you,
drink
baby.
that,
I'm
it's
looking out for my
poison.
messages to see if there was anybody messaged me about
And I
the
also hear
not being able to get in
weird
here
music,
to,
but
or
it's very
just checking
unsettling.
to see if Michelle or Cody
And then the
were
tactile
around
starts about being scratched.
to speak.
I don't
Okay,
see any.
so you can imagine that with so much stimulus or perceived stimulus, which for me, I'm experiencing real stuff, and I can tell the difference between like this and if I were to just get a hallucination because it feels very faint and sometimes it doesn't. It's I just know what that feels like. I've learned about the illness. I've had enough therapy and enough grounding and enough mindfulness to I now identify and recognize most of my positive symptoms as they're occurring. And it's been almost 15 years now. I was diagnosed at 22 and today I'm 35. And I've had some therapy, and the therapy I've had, some of my therapy has been really good. But it still this illness doesn't care about how much therapy that I've had. The illness is still the illness, which is incurable. And I happen to have treatment resistant, which means that I've tried every medication that there is for schizophrenia, and either it doesn't work or there's a side effect. And sometimes the side effects are more dangerous to experience than the actual illness itself because they actually put me in danger. So, for example, I have poor concentration, more disorganized behaviors in speech, more confusion about what's going on and what's real. And did you say that? And I heard you say that. And I'll snap at Chandra because I thought she said something to me that was offensive or rude or mean or. And and I get confused about what I heard because the voices can sound like Chandra. The voices can sound like my grandmother, who I haven't talked to in over 10 years. And I've learned to do what's called reality checking, which is um when I hear something or see something that I'm not sure if it's a hallucination, because I'm pretty good at, like I said, identifying my hallucinations now. But sometimes it's really hard to tell. And so if I am confused or something seems off, I'll turn to somebody like Chandra, who doesn't have schizophrenia, and I'll ask them, hey, did you hear that? Did you see that? Did you feel that? Did you say that? Did you say that? Or I'll check in and I'll ask another person, just like you would if you heard me say something mean to you. And I do that because I don't know what to believe. And that leads to confusion, suspicion, paranoia. It can cause a lot of anxiety. I get really anxious because I think people are talking about me, and I don't want to, I'm afraid that everybody like hates me and the people are talking about me all the time. And poverty of speech is at the point where it's like poverty is, lacking. Is poverty means don't have, and speech is, talking. So the worse I stay and the poorer I do, the worse my speech becomes. And then the very worst of it is the worst outside I've experienced from this is catatonia, which can be fatal, because when you're catatonic, it means you're not moving, talking, you're not brushing your teeth, you're not eating, you're not sleeping, and you're not toileting, you know, like an adult. And that can go on for days. And if you can only go so long for that state, you can only survive maybe 3 to 7 days with, without water. And if I didn't have a partner, there was nobody around, I would just starve to death. So catatonia it can be fatal. It's life threatening. And it's happened to me when my brain is so overloaded that I just can't anymore, and I just get stuck in place. And I'm stuck in place, and I'm stuck in place, and I hear you, but I can't hear you. Or my body's starting to dissociate. I'm starting to dissociate and numb, and all of the even the tactile hallucinations, I don't even feel them anymore because I'm detaching. I'm off. I'm away. I'm not with you. And that leads me to the olfactory stuff. And I wanted to share this because it's really interesting that I didn't know that. I guess it's rare, but I'm not the only person, but there's very few of us who experience olfactory, which is strange smells. And one of my strange smells is corpses, and my body, and or burning, something burnt, a burnt material, or often like a metal or like a melted metal smell. And that can lead to things like, what is that? What's causing that? Where's that coming from? And that I came up with this belief for some reason at some point that I was dead, that I had died, that I'd been killed in the military, and that I was living in basically limbo or purgatory because I'm gay. And I came up with this belief that I was dead. And I stopped believing that I even had a pulse. I didn't, and no matter what people said, like my doctor would sit there and go, "You're literally sitting in front of me. Do you think I'm dead? No. Do you believe in ghosts? No. Well, then why, and it would go rounds and rounds and rounds because I smell like a corpse. I smell like a body, and I know what, unfortunately, I know what a dead body smells like. So I don't know if that's something that's manifested from, and it's called believing yourself to be dead, or to believe that you're not alive or don't have an identity or a self or at all, to believe that you're dead, is something called Cotard syndrome. And that's, I guess, really rare, but it makes kind of sense if you look at my background and look at my history. But that doesn't mean that everything about psychosis makes sense or has a connection. Psychosis isn't necessarily my internal world that's being externalized back to me and mirrored back to me. It's not just my thoughts, my inner dialogue that I am detached from, and I can't, and I think that I'm hearing my thoughts being broadcast to me, and my brain's tricking me in that way. That's not the way that my brain is tricking itself. It's just tricking, it's misfiring. It's taking in a lot of information, and it's not able to make those firm connections. And then there's misfiring going on. There's just signals that are misfiring. So not every hallucination is tied back to my psyche and has an explanation. This is an irrational illness that sometimes things are just weird and there's no explaining it. There's not because I had a fixation on this thing and that's why it manifests through the illness this way. No, or because this happened to me and that now I'm experiencing this. Not all the time. There's just no such thing as like an all or nothing situation. There's nuance. This illness is chaotic. It's very chaotic. I wanted to also check the chat, of course, or check the, oh, Joanne said that, okay, that's good. Let's see, what else? I wanted to kind of touch on, since I can't see anyone's chat, I'm just going to move forward. we talk about
all the time.
stigma,
There's just no such thing as like
and
an all or
stigma
nothing
is obviously
situation.
a
There's
mark of
no one.
disgrace.
It's just the illness is
And so
not
schizophrenia is often conflated with
very good.
psychopathy and serial killers and
I was
murder
wanting to also
and associated with that. And that therefore, because people get those messages from movies like Split, which is supposed to be about DID, not even schizophrenia, but then there's an alter, I guess, who hears voices or has like an evil whatever who commands him to kill or whatever. So I couldn't even watch the movie. I just watched like I read the whole summary of it, like scene by scene summaries and stuff. But I haven't seen the movie because I don't want to support that. And shame on M. Night Shyamalan for again exploiting a mental illness and using a mental illness like DID as a plot device, and schizophrenia or psychosis again as a plot device to again stir up more, perpetuate more myths about how dangerous people with these particular illnesses are compared to the rest of the population. And so it matters because accurate portrayals can save lives. When people think that people with schizophrenia are crazy and dangerous, when they see them in the street, they might attack that person thinking that they're doing society a favor by taking out some evil entity from the world. And that itself can become a delusion. We're not all, no one is immune from delusions. None of us are. That's just a fact of life. We all are suffering from at least one fixed false belief, a minimum of one. Everybody has one, and everybody has at least one false memory. But my brain is tricking me a lot of the time, more than yours is, into believing that there's more going on than there is. There's more to it than that. And that brings on shame and stress, and that increases the risk of suicide. And suicide is the number one killer of people with schizophrenia. More than half of people with schizophrenia statistically try to end their life more than one time. And I have tried to take my life on at least 5 different occasions, and I've been hospitalized multiple times. And I'm almost in a constant state of suicidality because I'm constantly being overwhelmed and stressed out and pushed to the edge. And I have to control my reactions and responses all the time. Managing my illness and managing my response to it is my entire chief business of the entire chief business of my life. Masking for other people's comfort to protect them and to make sure that others feel safe around me and don't feel that I'm some crazy lunatic who's talking to, and yelling at the air and everything, and gesticulating wildly because I'm frustrated and I'm angry at my voices and I'm in a battle that they can't see. And I have to ignore them and stay grounded. And I'm listening to Chandra's, share her music or her story about her day, or I'm doing this right now. I'm focusing on my art. I'm writing my book right now. I'm outlining my book, or I'm safe. I'm loved. Everything's okay. So I've learned some of these grounding techniques, just like everybody with anxiety receives these tools about how to ground yourself and stay calm and everything. And those grounding techniques and those mindfulness techniques have really helped me over the years. And even when I'm not in therapy, I can still go back to those techniques and they do sometimes help. However, the illness is treatment resistant and there are flares, and the more stressed I am, the worse the flares are. Stress stinks, you know what I mean? It really sucks, and it can really have a detrimental effect on my ability to function, go to work, carry a conversation, complete a task, show up for something, follow through. Um, so it matters because I believe that people like me, creators, artists, and people like that, we have a responsibility to promote respect and understanding, and to not simply just exploit or use these mental illnesses, especially highly stigmatized mental illnesses like schizophrenia, like DID, like bipolar, like psychosis, just as a general plot device. And instead of understanding that those depictions in the media and in the real world really do adversely affect and lead to people's deaths in the real world. And I don't know about you, but as an artist, I can't live with knowing that something I put out there led people to feel worse about having schizophrenia. So I actually, when I was in film school, I wrote a movie about becoming a teacher, and because I was on track to become a teacher, and I had this hope and fear: what happens if I have a breakdown in front of my class? And instead of choosing to depict the reality of what actually happened, I actually kind of turned out to be sort of prophetic, because I ended up going into teaching, and then I didn't succeed in my first internship in teaching. I halfway through my internship, I was dismissed from the program, and I was called delusional. And I had I had bonded with these folks. Like these, I thought I had found my people in education and that I was on the right track in my life. And I actually opened up and shared for the first time in public, with my cohort, that I had schizophrenia, and it was the first time I'd ever said it in public. And everybody that was there, my advisor, all of my teachers, instructors, the entire cohort, all of my peers were there. And I actually, for the first time, admitted that I had this. And I opened myself up because the next time around, at the end of the semester, I was actually called delusional. I did struggle, but also there were professional, unprofessional behaviors on the part of my advisor too. And what happened was I called that person out for failing me as my teacher. I felt that she had failed me, and my failure is her failure. It's a reflection on her. And because she didn't follow through, and she was accusing me of things, and then telling me that she's gonna not read my students' work, her their final stories or whatever, because she knew without even looking at them that they hadn't grown at all. But that if she had been listening to me the whole time, she would have heard me explain that the kids were all passing their English classes. They found that the class had helped them get better at passing the grammar sections of their and the reading and comprehension sections of their English classes. And I was teaching an EL kind of an ELD class. And I just said to her, hey, I please read my kids' essays. And she's like, no, I'm not going to read that. You're delusional if you think their kids have grown at all. And I said, well, if you feel that I'm a failure, then I feel as my teacher and my mentor, you've let me down. You failed me. My failure is a reflection on you as a teacher. And calling me delusional when you know I have schizophrenia is a violation of ADA. But I wasn't registered with the Office of Student Disabilities at the time. So I didn't have any, basically everybody told me like, yeah, if you try to sue them, whatever, they'll just say, well, you didn't go and register with the blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, because I was really unwell and I was stressed. And I was actually working, not only was I in an intensive master's program with a combined credential program that a lot of people washed out of before the end of the first term, but I stuck it out and I had a 3.9 GPA and I was doing really well, but I was still suffering from schizophrenia and I wasn't on good medication. And I was talking about earlier side effects and stuff. Well, I ended up on a medication at one point that actually caused me to have what's called ocular crisis. And from the outside, it looked like I'm having a seizure because my eyes kind of roll upward and then they get locked in an upward position. And this went on for like a year and a half. It actually started off with like really extreme panic attacks. And then all of a sudden, my eyes just started locking upward. And it would happen while I was driving. It would happen while I was working. It would happen everywhere. And I had to leave work. I had to literally run to my car and then I had to drive like that. I had to drive in the car with my sister, my nephew. This happened almost on a daily basis. You can't miss that much work. You can't keep, running away from your job every time this happens. You can't keep having ambulances called to your place of employment and being taken away. That's not functioning. But I couldn't get disability because they said I wasn't disabled enough because I had a job and I was working and I was relatively taking care of myself for the most part. Like I wasn't necessarily always taking care of myself physically, but I was at least working consistently, you know. So it just comes back down to it's really important because I'm a real person. I really experienced a lot of heartache and loss and trauma and a lot of ups and downs and a lot of downs. Almost more downs I could say that I've had ups comparatively. But it doesn't mean that I'm giving up. It just means that I have to work a little harder you know, at fitting in. And if I just let go and I stopped thinking about what other people are thinking about and how they're responding to me, I would be doing my disservice to my loved ones if I didn't at least try to continue to work through it. I don't want to be on the streets. I sure should don't want to hurt people I love. And I don't um, think it's right that there are still artists who are telling me, hey, come work on my project. It's about a lady who hears voices and that she hears voices telling her to kill this person and she does it. And wow, isn't that edgy? Isn't that cool? Come support that. And I'm just like, continue to perpetuate harmful stereotypes about people like me instead of offering something when you have the ability to tell any story in the world and you have the resources to tell any story in the world, but you still choose to and their response to my pointing that out to you was, I just want to create cool art. That's not acceptable in 2025. That's not acceptable. The most common harmful stereotypes are that we're inherently dangerous, that we're incapable of working, that we're incapable of loving or being loved, that we're psychopaths, like I said earlier, and that we're inherently incompetent and can't be trusted to really do anything. A lot of people inflate it with autism even. I mentioned that there are all these movies and stuff. Well, here's a list of the worst offenders I could find, or I could think of offhand. That's not acceptable. I already mentioned Split, and people are like, "Oh, the second one, A Beautiful Mind. Oh, Russell Crowe. Oh, John Nash." But that was such a beautiful story. I mean, what a beautiful mind he had, and what a sad, tragic thing that happened to him. And it did give us a little bit of like it did paint people with schizophrenia more humanely, and I'll give it that. It was grossly inaccurate. It didn't accurately portray his marriage or what happened to his marriage. It didn't do. It just didn't. Just why make stuff up or why do that when you don't have to. The actual real story is actually the real lived consequences of schizophrenia and people who love people with schizophrenia and how taxing that can be for somebody who's caretaker of somebody with schizophrenia. And in the case of John Nash, I believe in the real world, in the real story of his life, his wife left him. They didn't stay married. And the movie makes it sound like, oh, this married they stayed together and that she supported him all the way through it. But in the real reality of it was so bad. At some point, she had to separate herself and leave. If I remember incorrectly, maybe I got it wrong. Somebody, please correct. It's okay if I'm wrong. Tell me, please. I got that wrong, but I just remember reading the actual something a while back about her saying directly to the media, like that's not what happened, but we just wanted to make a movie they wanted to make a movie that would at least humanize people with schizophrenia. And I will say, obviously, A Beautiful Mind did that enough, and obviously he won all these awards and everything. So I'll give it that credit. But in 2025, it's really important to get it right, get it authentic. There's no reason to take things away or add things to a person's life. If I were to remake The Awakening now, I would have to change the ending because the ending of The Awakening is the students all come together to rally on behalf of the teacher, and the parents end up having to bite the bullet and saying, "Oh wow, the kids are actually more mature than us, and we understand and forgive, and we're moving on." And then the school stands by her and everything, and it's a very inspirational ending. It's what my hope was for what might happen to me if anything like that did happen to me as a teacher. But in reality, I was dismissed, and nobody came to my defense except for my mom. And even then, it didn't matter because I went to the dean to appeal the C grade that I got in that program, and I had to wait like a month and a half or whatever for an answer. And when I got the answer, it was just, oh no, I sided with them with no explanations as to why he arrived at that conclusion or what helped him make that decision at all, or to help me understand the why of it. I was just told that the decision for the C grade stands, and you can't continue in the program with anything less than a B. And like I said, up until that point, I'd had A's, and maybe I think I had a one B plus. So it was just really sad and discouraging, and I felt like my whole life and my career was over. That I was basically being told like you're unsafe to be around. You're unsafe to be around. You're unsafe to be around kids. And so I need to, if I were to go back and remake that movie, I would have to make it based on what actually happened to me because that was my reality, and people need to see the reality of the world around them, not just what could be, or that's where my sci-fi is. I write all the sci-fi, like Glass Stars is about what it could be and going through all of it, but coming out better for it and evolving and growing and coming together and accepting things. But if I were to remake The Awakening about the teacher with schizophrenia, I would have to I would have to redo that whole ending because it wasn't actually what happened. My worst fear actually was realized, and I was told that I was not going to continue in the program, which meant I couldn't get my credential, which meant I was being told that I couldn't be a teacher, which meant my career was over. My entire purpose for being, my joie de vivre, was being taken, like stripped from me because of something that happened to me because of my circumstances. I didn't cause my schizophrenia. I didn't do it to myself. It wasn't because of a Ouija board or a demonic possession or because I'm gay or I'm being punished by God or something. It's a genetically, passed on illness, although anybody can become psychotic and anybody could theoretically become schizophrenic. Some people are more prone to it. Like I said, more genetically predisposed. Plus there can be environmental factors that all kind of conspire against a person to sort of stack the cards against them. In my case, I had all like the stars were in alignment, all the markers and hallmarks of catalysts and watersheds for the development of schizophrenia were present, and therefore I developed the disorder. And I was more likely to because it ran in my family. Of course, suicidality. I've talked a lot about this already. I wanted to ask Chandra at the last couple of minutes here if she's feeling up to it, to just kind of share what the impact of schizophrenia and loving somebody with schizophrenia has been like for her. I don't want to go in, I can't have time to go through the whole module, but if you really do want to see the rest of this and you want to go through with how we can actually, how I could help you if you're a creative artist, if you are looking to create a story about schizophrenia or psychosis and you need help, you need somebody to sort of consult on that to give their perspective and to provide more accuracy. in their representation of the illness on screen, then this course or this webinar on, portraying schizophrenia authentically for creative artists, specifically, you definitely want to tune into my March 22nd LinkedIn Live, where I'm going to actually be going over this in more detail, and I'll cover the whole thing. But for now, I just want to pull up the last. Actually, this also includes 10 best practices, specific, actual, actionable things that you can do. So hang on. No, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go over what on screen. Then this course or that you wanted to share on, portraying schizophrenia authentically for. You got to come into the camera, baby. You definitely want to tune into my March
in
22nd.
here.
So, like, had you ever known anybody with schizophrenia before you met me? That kind of stuff, and then like go from there, and then like what the beginning, middle, and end of our story so far. Actually, this also includes 10 best practices.
Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, I only have minutes, and it kind of gets into me and the way I was raised, which is another
it's okay. I mean, you can give a
crazy
little
thing going on in this
an
country with
overview, and then
stereotypes and stuff. And there were certain stereotypes I had of people with schizophrenia.
But did you know anybody?
Well, and that's why I had a stereotype. I knew one person, and that one person happened to be this awful con man, pedophile, like all sorts of things. And so in it being part of the mix of who he was, it made it scary for me because he was a scary guy doing awful things. But yeah, so when you boil it down to what the schizophrenic symptomology is, though, any stereotype goes out the window because it is what it is. Objectively, you are experiencing an overwhelm and an overload of like an onslaught to your senses that nobody else can feel or recognize. I mean, maybe in your behavior. And that's where the stereotype comes in, is because they can't feel or understand, they can only see the behavior. They don't get it. But I mean, that's the same for any illness. Again, that's the same for any invisible illness. If you have MS or Parkinson's, like she said earlier, same thing. Nobody, I mean, I live in chronic pain every day, and nobody can see that in looking at me. But the invisible aspect, I think, is very difficult for people, and is what leads to the stereotypes. And yeah, you just have to meet somebody and talk to them to
but what is
realize.
Can you give just like we can go over a little bit, but I mean, what do you want to share about what you have learned about it so far in the last 3 years of me, and what you've seen in me, or specifically, and
just that it's helpful to have the invisible aspect, I think, is very difficult for people. Yeah, your feet on the ground to be someone who can have moments of checking in. You definitely need a partner who it wouldn't serve somebody with schizophrenia to be with somebody who isn't checking in with their emotional needs. You need somebody to have constant check-ins. You need somebody to be willing to listen actively to what you're saying.
right.
Because I know there's this thing about like, don't like encourage the delusions.
And I think that's true.
Yeah,
accurate for the most part. But you can validate a person's experience, their response to it,
but if you don't understand what's going on, yeah, I feel like it puts you at a disadvantage to help if you don't stop to listen and take in and understand what this person thinks is going on. How else if you just approach it not knowing, you're not going to do well. And I think people just immediately go, oh, schizophrenia, something's going on, treat it this way. But if they tried to listen, even in poverty of speech, if they could be there listening energetically,
Yeah. But I was just gonna say, because I was gonna ask you, I was trying to just kind of give right now. I wanted to ask you for just a summary of what you have seen and known, and now what you learned about the illness itself. What did you see? What is it like for you to see and experience as my partner? Like you met me,
One
you had
thing,
only these
like
stereotypes
things I
about
didn't know about.
schizophrenia, and then you
Okay.
met me. How did that change your perception?
It
Specifically,
well, it changed
that's
it
what I'm asking.
completely. Again, I was raised Mormon, which is already like a cult situation with some awful narcissistic thought patterns, and that leads to stereotyping and othering anyone, let alone somebody with schizophrenia. And so yeah, and the again, the only man I knew who had it, I was already feeling negative feelings about it because he had pathologies going on as well, that were that's the other thing. Schizophrenia, I think people look at as if these people are, yeah, inherently evil in some way, demon possessed. this isn't this isn't anything they're doing. This is something happening to them. They're overstimulated by sensory input is all that's happening. It's not them doing something to somebody. That would be a pathology. That would be them needing to having an intention to gain something from somebody. They're overstimulated by sensory input that you're not hearing. That's it. And I think one thing that surprised me, so going from like Mormon standpoint of schizophrenia being very othered and very just, thrown in the pool with all of the others, the pedophiles and the anyone with mental illness, any queer, any other, it's thrown in the pool, and it's a bad pool, right? Bad. So then to learn and realize that some of the scary things are things I felt scary, like the yelling, to understand the intention again, that this isn't a pathology. This isn't an intention to hurt. This is a person who is being bombarded with sound that's so loud that they're trying to speak over it so they can hear themselves. Like imagine you're in like a super loud concert that you can like feel the music hitting your
Yeah.
heart, like
Mhm.
bass, like that level, and you're trying to talk to the person in front of you, and you're screaming. And if they turn off that music all of a sudden, you'd be like, oh, I'm screaming. But she doesn't, the music never turns off, and she never has that moment of like, oh, I'm screaming. And so
Yeah.
she's just loud. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm scared. Like this is, you get into like the stereotypes of like this is um large behavior that could lead to violence, but yeah, when you look at the intention, it's not a pathology. This is an illness that's out of their control, and they're not, it's something happening to them. They're not doing anything to you. They're just not understanding the situation. Her volume level is for the reality she's in. And I just put on my ear. Oh,
Okay.
I just put on
You're good.
my earbuds, like my earphones at this point, because again, we could go back and forth about like finding the right volume, but like I just end up putting on my headphones because again, if somebody is doing poorly, whatever they have, whatever those symptoms are, those are going to be the symptoms when they're doing poorly, obviously, And again, there's this stereotype where when somebody with some sort of mental illness, something that affects their behavior, is doing poorly, then it's not okay by society's standards. But when you're doing poorly physically, in a way that other people can make sense of, that's the thing. Not even physically, I take that back, because people look at me the same way with my physical illness that nobody can understand. Nobody quite knows what's going on with me. People have to be able to understand it. People have to be able to put it in, match it to a card they've already seen in their life. You remember like when you were a baby and you had those cards, and you had to like match up like the boat to the boat, the basketball to the basketball. It's like if they haven't already seen the card, like if they don't see it like on their list of cards and they hold it up, they're just like like
Yeah.
they can't like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I lost it somewhere, but
No, I think yeah, I think I'm following you.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and definitely, it's funny too. Y'all said something before. That things that we bring to you about. It's just just like I was gonna say, I listen to volume very loudly too, generally too. Like I tend to blast music at loud volumes, and I can't do that with the TV late at night. So I like to have the closed captions on. Actually, I like to keep them on generally because it's so loud in my world that I can't actually keep track of the
So
conversation,
much
and I'm
going
so
on.
distracted that at least the captions give me something to focus on.
Yeah.
And then I sometimes miss the captions, so I'll look away and I get ADHD distracted, or I hyper focus on what I'm doing in front of me. I have a hard time keep maintaining concentration for very long periods of time, except for during that time of hyper focus. And hyper focus is actually when I actually get things done and finish tasks. And so I've sort of used the hyper focus as sort of a superpower, even though it can be really frustrating for Chandra because I'll be hyper focusing on something and she'll be like trying to talk to me or say something or even get my attention for something that's necessary. And I'll be like, what do you want? Like, you know what I mean? What, you know, what do you need? Like, I'm busy. I'm doing this. I'm focusing. And that's really fucking rude, you know? And I don't want to be rude. Like, the fuck? You know, I don't want to be that way. And I hate that I'm like that. But I
Well, but
also
I
know that
also
it's,
I want to talk about, and I wonder about we talk about all of the factors that lead to schizophrenia, right? And that it's a combination of multiple factors, especially in your case, because you have the genetic component there. You have a great uncle who had it. You
and
have
my uncle, my grandmother's brother.
yeah, and you have the possible environment and nutritional issues in your developmental years. You have the combat PTSD
Trauma.
and
It's just trauma,
the
trauma,
trauma,
trauma.
yeah, and the trauma I'm getting to that I see a lot, and I think what I see her talking about, which is interesting because again we're going through like our the whole like generational trauma and the narcissist mother cycle thing. And I see in the way she talks about schizophrenia as the voices from behind telling her all the awful things, and that she has to try to keep it from spilling out into the world because it's so overwhelming and they won't leave her alone. And I see both little girl Cat um being programmed with that software, being programmed with all of those awful words as a little girl, and I feel awful. And then I also see just the map of narcissism there being mirrored in the poor victim, in the child of the narcissist. I see the mirror image of that in schizophrenia, the hiding, having to hide the dark thoughts that are always there, tearing you and your self-image apart, while having to like keep the mask that society is telling you to keep. It's the same thing, but again, the difference is that
Hang on,
schizophrenia
pause though, because you
is
said
just
dark thoughts, and it's not dark thoughts. I'm hearing voices that are telling me things. Those aren't my thoughts about
exactly.
myself.
No, it's very
me
no, they're not hearing them.
Okay, wait on. I want to pause.
No, narcissists don't hear voices.
I want to pause. Hang on a second. We're not talking about narcissism. We're talking about schizophrenia.
I know.
And I'm talking about my lived experience. It's not the things that I'm not thinking about being raped with a knife. Okay. I don't know where that came from. That doesn't come from my lived experience.
Yeah, that's
doesn't come from anything I want to
glitch
do or
in the
I
brain.
want to be done to me.
Right. It's also a combo.
So be
It's a
careful when
combo.
you say, like, this is what I'm talking
Well, that's
about.
what I'm saying. It's a
Be
combo
careful
of
when you say this
factors.
person's battling their dark thoughts. It's not my dark thoughts.
No,
I'm battling.
yeah.
It's voices that are misfires of my brain, but they're not the thoughts that I think about myself.
Exactly. No, that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
have an internal dialogue of self-loathing and hatred that tells me that I want to hurt myself or kill myself all the time. I have voices telling me to do that live behind me. I'm telling you that for me, I thought I had a chip in my brain and that it was manifesting people behind me, or that's what's causing the voices.
Exactly. Yeah. The difference between the difference
so it's not dark thought. My dark thoughts that are being mirrored back to me through the voices. I don't think those things. I don't think those things about myself. Not actively. I'm saying it's not, that's not what schizophrenia is for me. It's not my internal monologue or my self-loathing or my self-hatred that's being reflected back on me.
No, that was my point, is that is narcissism, and schizophrenia
but hang on, how is that narcissism? Why are we talking about narcissism? I just want to talk about schizophrenia and how that leads to people believing that this person, I'm talking about my experience with, you're talking about psychosis. And you're saying that that person is battling their own dark thoughts. That's not what's happening.
No, it's not. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm battling schizophrenia. I'm battling external stimulus. That's what I'm just trying to share.
is
what? How is? But hang on.
yeah.
How is that? And that's not what I heard you say.
Right. Yeah. There
I
was a
heard you say
misunderstanding there.
that person is battling their dark thoughts.
Yeah, the narcissist is battling their dark thoughts, and I see this like programming in the poor child that will end up with schizophrenia, the mother's dark thoughts that she's hiding behind the mask, and then this poor child has no control because it's the illness that has split them like that, and now their brain is just misfiring all of the crap that has been said and traumatized to the point where they develop schizophrenia.
Sure,
and
but I don't want to get to the place where we're
a,
talking about my mom being a narcissist because my mom hasn't been diagnosed as a narcissist or as with narcissistic personality disorder. So I'm just trying to be careful when we again use the word narcissism.
No, I'm
You're
just talking about the map
narcissistic
of
mothers causing their kids to be schizophrenic. That's what I'm hearing you get to, and I want to dispel that belief because that's not true.
No,
anybody who grows up in a healthy environment with healthy parents
could still
develop schizophrenia.
Again, it's many factors. It's genetic as well.
There
it's
are no
environmental and genetic.
It's a combination of those things. And I'm saying, but however, there are people who don't have it in their genes develop it. So it's not, there is no one size fits all approach to who gets it or doesn't get it, or if there's anybody and everybody on earth is susceptible to psychosis and to possibly schizophrenia. And there are just people in the world who are more susceptible or disposed.
I'm just saying, in your case, factors
but
here
I just want to be careful about calling my mom a narcissist on, you know, we don't know. We're not trained.
We're just talking about behavior
you're
that
saying
is
when a narcissist basically causes schizophrenia in their child, and you're talking about my family, my story, and I just want to stay away from the idea that my mom is a narcissist and caused my schizophrenia, because that's not accurate.
No, it's only part of the puzzle.
It's
her treatment of you is only part of the puzzle.
I'm just saying that my mom isn't doesn't have a diagnosis of anything. Right. And I'm not qualified and you're not qualified. We're not qualified
that's not what
to be throwing labels like that are highly stigmatizing. And this episode, this session right now that we're on is about trying to bring clarity and accuracy and a better understanding about schizophrenia to the world. Absolutely. So it's not really about narcissism. And I don't want to get into narcissism because I'm not qualified to talk about that in a clinical way.
No, I was using it as an example.
But you're saying you're talking about me, and you're saying in your case, you've said it. We'll go back and rewatch this, and I'll show you where you just said that my mom is who you're talking about. And you're saying that a narcissist my mom is a narcissist and that she caused my schizophrenia. That's what I'm hearing you say. To bring clarity and accuracy and a better understanding. But I don't want to go, you see where I'm coming from? I don't want to, I don't think it's appropriate. I'm not qualified to describe her in that way or to describe it that way. My mom didn't cause my schizophrenia.
No, we just
acknowledged
the trauma did. The trauma is
it's not
contributing factor.
I'm saying, I know, but
that's all I said.
That isn't all that I heard you say.
Okay,
you said
that's fair. That's fair. Let's
the mother is a narcissist, and then I said, what were you talking about narcissism? And then you said your mom. And I don't want to talk about my mom or her narcissism or any of that.
The behavior
those are private.
Harmed you.
We can have our speculations and we can have what we think, but nobody has diagnosed my mom with narcissistic personality disorder. And I just don't want the public to hear this or anybody to come back later on and watch this and see this and hear you say that my mom is a narcissist. No, we're here and we're working through it already. It's already here. It happened. You said it. You said what you said. So I'm just trying to ameliorate.
No, it's fine.
By clarifying
as well. Let's ask in the comments. There's people watching.
I don't know. Hang on. I don't know yet. Let me just talk about my mom. Look and see. And I don't see it in the comments. We can have our speculations.
Yeah, no, they're not in the comments right now. But there are three viewers, it says.
I understand, but there's nobody commenting or anything, so I don't know what people are thinking
about this. Well, we can ask for them in the comments.
But I'm asking right now, you can hear me. If there's something that I misunderstood.
Or if there's any other questions.
This is what I'm saying.
If there's any other questions about this.
Questions about the illness or what it's like to love somebody who has this, that's will be the time to drop them in the comment section, and then we'll come back to it at the next AMA, and I'll reiterate and I'll address all of that the next one. I'll also answer your emails or messages directly if you have a question you don't want to bring up here today. That's totally fine. You can just message me on LinkedIn and we can go from there. But yeah, I'm glad that happened because it just gave us an opportunity, to clarify, which is that, first of all, let's be clear. My mom has not been diagnosed with narcissism or a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. My mom made a lot of poor decisions, and that did traumatize and affect me. And then I joined the military.
And that further traumatized. And that's what my therapist believe is actually the catalyst for my schizophrenia
Oh yeah,
diagnosis.
that's most
So
of the
hang on. So
time.
wait, that's why I'm getting what I'm getting at.
Most of the time it's
You
a
just
yeah.
I heard you say that my mom is the reason why I
A
developed it.
contributing
And
factor
then you said
too.
a contributing factor, but I'm saying
No,
the
I
actual
listed
catalyst,
genetics,
the catalyst
environment.
for it was my military service. And that is what my therapists have told me. And that's why I want to make it clear that only I can share that information because it's from my therapist. My therapists have an idea about what actually triggered and what the stressful, catalyst was for me. And that was the stress of military service. So that there is an answer to that. There's no theory about it. We don't have to speculate. We have a kind of an answer. But at the end of the day, I just am trying to say it's not fair to start throwing labels around about people, especially in my family. And that's why I'm clarifying now. But I understand what you're trying to say. It's just I agree. It's totally true that yes, absolutely, my mom's choices definitely did adversely impact my mental health. And you're right. I'm just saying
We can agree to
they're
not
just saying again the way things are worded, and I'm a language person, and when you say things, you start throwing around the word narcissist. That's a highly stigmatized and charged word, and it's not fair to label somebody that way. Okay, we're human beings, and that's just all I was trying to say. And that's like my voices are already kicking off and telling me like all kinds of stuff, so I don't want to get like away from the point of this. The point of this is not to discuss narcissism or to say narcissism causes schizophrenia, because that's not accurate. I'm trying to just have an accurate definition, an accurate explanation of the factors and things like that can lead to it. And absolutely, abusive environment, growing up in abusive or neglectful or fraught environments with a lot of family stress and situations, being homeless, going through domestic violence, and all of that, absolutely experiencing all of those things under sustained stress and pressure for years and years and years, absolutely that contributes to a diagnosis of schizophrenia in my case. But it also was compounded, and my therapist had just said that the catalyst that they believe with all of that being undiagnosed and untreated, and then compounding it with military service, that being the watershed, because I was diagnosed within 6 months of leaving the military. My prodromal stage kicked off at such a high, sudden, and scary level that it became necessary to be hospitalized immediately. So I went to the hospital. I stayed in the hospital, and then I received that diagnosis. And I just thought it had been PTSD. Absolutely, that contributes. So that's where it was. I have an explanation for what kind of led to it. I have sort of a semblance of that. That's why it's important that I clarify and that you heard that, because I don't, that's the whole point of doing this. The whole point of this is to accurately explain and accurately describe the experience as much as possible. And nobody else can do that for me because nobody else has lived the life that my life. It's incumbent upon me to share what happened.
This
So,
this should be your video.
but it's important to have your input as somebody who loves me, to have your perspective, but knowing that when you are speaking about your loved one, also remembering that to be measured in our speech about things and be mindful. That's all a part of what I'm trying to do, is help people understand that mindfulness about how we talk about these subjects is important, and we should be open to being corrected when we are saying things that aren't accurate.
Absolutely, we want
So
the
I'm
truth
just
to be
saying, it's
out
like,
there.
I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to clarify because you
Nobody's
have
upset, baby.
misunderstood.
Nobody's upset. We're good.
I didn't say that you were upset.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just again making my
I'm
point
just
because you
reassuring
were looking
you.
at me a certain way, and I want to reassure
Yeah.
you that I understand what you're saying. But I'm saying, please,
Yeah.
in so doing, when we go roll this back to review it later to go back over it together, we're going to go back through and you're going to see the part where you said that and
Yeah.
why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
I think that's another part of being a good partner to someone with schizophrenia, is being able to reassure them repeatedly and lovingly that the conflict that they're feeling oftentimes is being exacerbated by what's going on with them, and that what they're feeling and the paranoia, like a lot of times she'll be worried that I don't love her or something, and I have to reassure her um, that I'm here, and I love her. So I think I think it's about being there for grounding and reassuring and listening, um, validating what's going on with them, and that validating the experience, reassuring, and I don't know, it is hard. It's hard finding the boundary between, yeah, validating and reassuring, and okay, this experience is now feeling painful to me too. What do we do about that? And yeah, finding ways as the caretaker to work through that, that transferred pain that's part of the process here. Reassuring, yeah. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it is hard. It's hard finding the boundary between, yeah, validating and reassuring.
I carry a lot of shame and guilt living with it this way because I'm not always good at handling it. I'm not always good
Well,
at
and
how I
there are
respond to it.
things
And
we don't want to
home
talk
is
about.
and
Yeah,
home is supposed to be sanctuary.
right.
And I need to be able to have a place where I have privacy and some things need to be kept
Exactly.
private,
Yeah,
you
like
know?
that one thing that you said you were gonna put on, like the one for special people. Maybe not. Maybe that's like a household secret. Like
What?
that you were gonna talk about that one day in the other account for like subscribers or people who pay or whatever. Maybe I misunderstood you. That happens a lot. That's
No,
another thing, is we have
I don't have anything
misunderstandings
about
that we
being
have
subscribed.
to do this
I don't have any paid
constantly with each other,
subscribers.
trying to figure out
What are you talking
what
about? I
each
don't have
other
any, that's
said
what I'm saying. I don't
when.
have any, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like
I don't have another account set up for any paid subscribers except for my website for 99 cents a month to read my books.
Oh, okay.
That has nothing to do with any of this.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
I
You
don't
said it
charge
earlier
anything.
in here. Yeah.
No, I didn't
No
say that
worries.
I'm charging anything for this.
No, not for this.
I don't understand what you're saying. Can you clarify?
You were gonna make another video.
About what? So I don't know what you're,
Misunderstanding.
I don't know what you're talking about,
That's okay.
Sandra.
We'll
I'm
talk
not
about it
making
later.
another
It's
video for
okay.
any paid subscriptions or anything.
We'll talk about it later. It's okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not creating any paid videos for paid subscribers. I'm not monetizing my channel. You need 1,000 subscribers. I have 38 subscribers on my channel. If I
Yeah,
wanted
understood.
to monetize my YouTube channel, I would be live streaming this from YouTube.
I don't know. You said it
My
earlier.
YouTube channel.
No worries.
To attract more attention and get the algorithm interested in my content to know I'm here and I'm making content about schizophrenia, I would be live streaming from YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn, which doesn't have as many people on it who attend its live and stuff lives like this. So I don't know what you're talking about. I have no intention of making a separate video that's for paid subscribers only. No, my content will always be freely accessible. About schizophrenia. My fictional books that I write, my fiction, my writing, my art, I charge for that. But I only charge 99 cents a month to subscribe to it monthly to get new stuff monthly. So that's all I charge for. But I'll never be monetizing and charging people to watch my videos about schizophrenia ever. I don't believe it. I don't believe in that. And I never said anything about that. So I don't know where that came from. But I didn't say that I'm making a separate video just for paid people. So it should be clear. I'm not doing that, just so you know. You can always watch everything that I say about schizophrenia and read it for free. My fictional book. Okay, so we are way over time, but I really do. I'm glad that I did go over. I'm glad that we went over. I'm glad that these things are you can see in real time. Like I'm really ill, and there are miscommunications and misunderstandings. And she's giving me a look right now, and I'm telling you right now, I feel like she hates me. I never said anything. So like I have to go now and tell myself that everything's okay and do all of this now because I have a perception that she hates me. So this is just what it is like for me, and it's like this all the time.
Right. That it, yeah, like it doesn't
really
matter
all the
Yeah,
time.
it doesn't matter. It's just like she'll just like think that, and it can be out of the blue. Like earlier we were having fun and laughing, and then like 10 seconds pass in silence, and then suddenly, yeah, and it was like, oh, like it does come on suddenly. It does switch. It's an instability for it's unstable sometimes, for sure. But again, she's lived with it for 15 years, and she knows the holistic tactics used to hear and understand her body and what to do when, to feel the best she can, to make the best of it, plus did you want to go into your medications you're on, or is that not really a conversation for online?
Medications, I already said that earlier. I'm not even taking anything right now.
You are taking.
No, I'm not taking any antipsychotic medication. There is no antipsychotic medication.
No, she's taking
but
ketamine.
I'm gonna talk about all of that next time.
Okay.
we'll talk about the ketamine stuff. I have I do have a newsletter I wrote about, a newsletter article that I wrote about ketamine. So if you want to know about that, you can go read that. You don't even have to wait for another session to know about my experience with ketamine. But I just want to, it just triggered me to want to go. I don't want to talk about that in the session. I want to go ahead and conclude now. And then if you want to come to the next AMA, if you want to read my articles and get caught up on all of this in detail, just keep an eye on my LinkedIn, keep an eye on my YouTube channel. I guess I'll put some stuff up on there. And I'll do the very best I can to keep things a little bit fluid and more organized and structured. But this was really supposed to be I show up and then folks come in and they ask me questions. I was going to give just a brief overview of my situation and basically everything, the overview, and then open myself up to questions. And because of the format of the LinkedIn Live situation, it just didn't come together that way. But I do appreciate you hanging in there with me. Thank you for anybody who's here. I can't see who's here. That's what I'm saying. I can't see who is here with me. I can only see that there's 3 people according to the thing that are looking at this, but you can see what I can see, and it says 3 viewers. One of them could be me, and I don't know. So somebody will have to like tell me if you know more about LinkedIn Live or how this works, especially with Zoom. Please get with me and let me know like what I need to do to fix it so that this doesn't like go this way next time. Or I guess I'll just switch it over to YouTube and do my lives from YouTube instead. And I really want to do that, but I'm just I do appreciate you. I have to be like mindful of like the technologies and screens and stuff like that because I see things and anyway, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. And once again, I'm Kat King, and I hope to see you guys next time. I'll be doing my webinar on portraying schizophrenia authentically and portraying it authentically in film and TV and art and all of that. I'll be doing that on March 25th. That's a Saturday. So if weekdays don't work for you, maybe a weekend session will be better. But until then, I guess just kind of keep an eye out for any more content that's coming off my YouTube channel, Mythbusting Schizophrenia, or I am posting these up as well. My Ask Me Anything. So I post this one, maybe not the whole thing. Maybe I'll just clip it because I didn't really have the audience. I was really hoping for an interactive session here with an audience, but with other people. But I'm alone in this right now, so I was like, okay, I'll have Chandra come in and sit and explain. But I also did that like off the cuff, and I asked her at the last minute and put her on the spot, and that wasn't fair. So I think it's important that like next time if we're going to do this, I'll make a few adjustments to it. But I'm hoping that it'll be interactive. So thank you for your patience and understanding, and we will see you up as well. My Ask Me Anything. So I post this one, maybe not the whole thing. Maybe I'll just clip it because I didn't really. I want to know if I can download it so I can clip it. Hey.
Hi. Yeah, no, I just meant don't talk about what happened to us that night that I had to tell you about.
Okay, hang on a second. I'm just trying to share my screen. How I don't remember how to do it.
Oh, end up there.
Stop recording. Okay, let's go ahead and stop recording.